Ladies and gentlemen, happy Thanksgiving from your number one Florida hockey podcast, the Cats and Bolts. 3, 2, 1.
Hey, I like it. Happy holidays, everybody. Happy Thanksgiving from Florida's favorite hockey show. And as producer Ben Castro says, don't go anywhere, Ben. Just hang on. Florida's number one hockey podcast, too. Thanks for wearing the shirt. One of the crew did not get the memo. Only 2 seasons, 13 episodes in. She doesn't understand it yet, that it's a Florida hockey show, not the Edmonton Oilers. How are you?
I don't have the same amount of chest hair that the two of you have, so I don't feel like I'd be doing it justice if I wore that shirt.
That's the best you got? Okay, that's not bad. That's not bad. Hi, everybody. Welcome to this week's edition. How are you doing over there?
Fucking fantastic now.
Yeah, we're grooving. We're rolling. What are we going to talk about this week, Serena?
That's not my job. When we walked in, Rod was like, we almost locked Rod out. And would my feelings have been hurt? No. But I was like, Ben, Rod's behind me. Don't lock the door. And Rod's like, you almost forgot about the brains of the operation. So by all means.
Okay. Well, I thought amongst us friends we could pull that off. But anyways, happy Thanksgiving. I'll be asking her at the end of the show what she's thankful for. So be thinking about that. But before we go, it is the Thanksgiving episode, everybody. And I feel like I want to dive right now into what that means for U.S. Thanksgiving. And the vast majority of our viewers are American. You don't understand that in Canada, especially NHL circles, are referred to this week as U.S. Thanksgiving because Canadians celebrate theirs in October. And there's a very special stat and an analytic that has to do with that. But before we go any further than that, we'll get to it. That's the meat. That's the turkey of the show. Serena, we go into the week with the Panthers losers of 4 in a row, and they've dropped 6 of their last 7 games. And I want to ask you your take on that because the alarm bells are sounding, and we'll get to mine in a second. It's in Wednesday's edition of the South Florida Tribune, the column that I write on the NHL, particularly here in Florida. But they finally hit the skids. This is the swoon that I felt like we knew what was coming. But how about you?
I think it happens to every team. I mean, to be totally honest, what we've seen from the Panthers this year, there were some games where they were really good and some games where they were just really not good. There hasn't been as many games where they were kind of in the middle. So this is kind of what happened to them last year when Paul Maurice told everybody just calm down. Everything's going to be fine. He was juggling some lines up. It was the same thing. It's early in the season, and that's probably a good thing, I think, because it's going to give them a little bit of an opportunity to play around with some things. Last year, it happened a little bit later in the season. Not saying it's not going to happen again, but I'm not surprised. I personally feel like the defense for the Panthers this year has not been there. They're playing teams that are faster than them. When they played who did they play the other night?
Colorado.
It was Colorado. I mean, Colorado, you have guys as good as Nate McKinnon and Cale Makar. They just couldn't stop them. You're not going to stop. No one's going to stop a Nate McKinnon because he's a freight train on skates. But you can see where the holes are in their defense overall when they play against guys like McKinnon and Makar.
By the way, Lightning fans, we're going to get to your team too in a second, but we live in Florida. We go to every Panthers game, and thank you to the Panthers for that. But you want to be taken seriously as a hockey market, and you are. You both have won Stanley Cups, but we're going to talk about you as a serious hockey market and some things that you may not like. Like I've had people come back at me on a few things. Number one, you were with me at the Colorado game here on Saturday, where I thought I heard fans booing the Panthers.
You did.
Okay, well, I put that on Twitter, and people got up me. They're like, quit trying to start something. We were there. There was no booing. I'm pretty sure I heard it. Okay, so go ahead.
He looked at me immediately and said, were they just booing? And I was like, yeah, they were. Absolutely. I didn't even have to think twice about it. There were fans that were booing. And then we had this conversation on the way home because Rod's like, I'm already lighting up Twitter because people are really upset that I accused the fans of booing. A, they were booing. But B, I don't necessarily think that booing is catastrophic. I don't know why everybody got so butthurt about that. I've seen fans throw jerseys on the ice. That, to me, go away. You should never be able to be a fan of that team ever again if you do something like that. But booing happens, but don't get so defensive about it. You were doing it. So chill. It was happening. Relax. But Panthers fans are extremely defensive. Always. We see a lot of Canadian fans that they try to make fun. Oh, people actually go to hockey games there. And to be honest, I'm one of the first people to defend them. I'm like, yeah, they're like, oh, there's nobody in the seats. There are. The games are pretty much sold out usually, but there's standing room. There's like the different areas. I'm like, don't just assume no one goes to the games. Okay, I will defend them on that. However, own up to your shit. You were booing your team. It's fine. Deal with it.
Yeah, somewhere. I don't understand why people got so upset. And number two, when are you going to get over this? I thought when you finally won a Stanley Cup and left that never won a cup club, that disgusting sledge of a club that Winnipeg's in and San Jose's in and Vancouver's in, you're not in that club anymore. Get over this defensiveness. And if you want to boo your team, listen, do whatever you want. What?
Well, I just think it was kind of the whole like, but it's been 30 years and we haven't won a Stanley Cup. Yeah, you're not alone. But that was kind of where it was coming from the top down from everybody. You know, it was like there was this expectation like, oh, woe is me, poor us. We lost in the final, blah, 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 blah. And I think you're right. Like, it's like, just guys, I don't know if it's that they haven't gotten over it. Or I don't know what the problem is. And I don't want to talk shit. I really don't. But it's okay. It's okay that you were booing your team. You paid to get into the rink. You know, again, don't throw jerseys on the ice. That's like putting a flag on the ground. That's different. But it's not the end of the world.
Well, which, by the way, the jersey thing, I've only seen them do it in two places, Edmonton and Toronto. So it's, that's a them thing. And by the way, I'm not saying the whole rink was booing them either, but it was more than two people. So all I'm saying is, wow, tough crowd. That's it.
But you're right. It's just everyone's so defensive here. Like, don't make fun of us. Don't well, guess what? The rest of the fans around the league are. Sorry to say, but they are.
And who cares?
Yeah, right. Who cares?
Yeah, we live here. We love it. And other than that, I'll say this. Because that's the other thing. I will go back and forth with you on the Panthers if I have time. Or Lightning as well. She won't because she's too busy. I got a lot of time.
We're talking about social media, by the way.
Yeah. So I have guys writing me going, Rod, what's wrong with the Panthers? Which, number one, it's not your job and it's not my job. So I don't spend much time thinking about these things. Number two, I'll give you my assessment. I'll give you my assessment. Oh. It is that this is a team that's now in the Stanley Cup hangover. They came in hot into the season. You saw that. Number one in the East for up until last week. But now they've lost 4 in a row, 6 of 7, and we were at the game, and a lot of you were too, against Colorado. Remember, 52 seconds into the game, Carter Verhaeghe, little floaty, easy wrist shot off the wall, boink, over Georgiev's shoulder. We're all thinking, this is going to be easy tonight. And they put it in. They coasted the rest of the way. Ended up allowing 7 goals, which is the most they've given up all year in the regular season. So they stopped playing. That's all. And you see Paul Maurice is upset at the way that they've been playing. He says, we're missing something in our game. It's like he's got to go look at the video to see exactly what they're missing. So if he doesn't know, you're not going to figure it out on social media. I'm not going to figure it out on social media. What?
Well, I just think back to, I've always had a stance that Colorado is such a strong team. We were talking about this the other night. Have they ever been shitty? I don't think so. And I remember a few years ago when they were playing Tampa in the final and our friends, the Dodge boys, oh yeah. And I said, have you watched Colorado play this year? They are steamrolling everyone right now. And after like the first couple of games, Blake was like, wow, Colorado's unbelievable. Right. Colorado's a good hockey team. So what you got to take into consideration is, like I said at the start, when you're playing guys like Nate McKinnon and Cale Makar, even though he's on the point, he will embarrass anybody on any day of the week. It's just a fact. So they were playing against Chicago. They lost to Chicago. It happens. It happens. But you're right. How is Paul Maurice supposed to say, like, how do you answer that question? Like, what's going on? I don't know. I don't know.
And he's not going to tell you the truth anyways, which is a whole other thing. She said to me the other night, because we actually pay attention in the press box at the games, you said Bob doesn't look that interested tonight. And he allowed 7. So nobody was. They weren't into it against Colorado. So she talks about how good they are, and goddamn, they're good. With Nichushkin, Rantanen, Makar. How many times was McKinnon left alone in front of the Panthers net or just behind the defense? How many times I turned to you and said, you might want to not leave that guy alone?
The guy is just always in the right spot at the right time. He's powerful on his skates. He can push anybody around. And Cale Makar is always paying attention. And I'm going to go out on a limb and say this right now. The Panthers do not have one player on their team that does that, let alone two. The top two players on the Colorado Avalanche are in the top 5 in the National Hockey League. The Panthers don't have anybody even close to that talent. It's not a personal thing, but I was watching Nate McKinnon bully his way around. And then I turned to Rod and I'm like, Sam Reinhart is soft. That's not the word I use, but I'm not going to say it on here. But it was like, there's a big difference between your goal scorer and Colorado's goal scorer. That's the difference right now on why Colorado's playing well and why the Panthers aren't. Because the top leading goal scorer on the Panthers doesn't go get in the corners. He doesn't push anybody off their skates. He's a different style of player. Before you come at me,
scorer, yeah.
He is. But Nate McKinnon is an all-around hockey player, and the Panthers don't have someone like that.
But that's why he won MVP of the league last year, right? He's all that.
Sure, but that's the difference. You could see the difference the other night. Like, why aren't the Panthers playing well? They don't have a guy like that getting them going.
Right. So, and I had a fan write me, a viewer of this show, and say, do you think Bill Zito is regretting letting Stolarz walk and OEL walk? And I'm like, no, I don't think Bill Zito looks back at all. I don't. But it's for the coaches to figure this out because this isn't the same team as last year. They're going to need to play a different way to be successful. And Tkachuk also said, by the way, in the media, he goes, we're playing better teams now, too, by the way. Think of who they've lost to recently. Colorado, New Jersey's the best up-and-coming team in the NHL right now. Washington is the second best team statistically in the NHL. So Tkachuk said we're playing better teams than we have. They'll figure it out. Which, by the way, can you viewers, as we're sitting here, tell me if you would like us to insert video clips in the show. We may or may not. We could. If you want to see these clips themselves from Tkachuk and Paul Maurice and Spencer Knight, we can do that. Just tell me. I'm ready to move on. How about you?
Sounds good.
The Lightning smacked around the Colorado Avalanche on Monday night at Amalie Arena 8-2. Brandon Hagel tied an NHL record with 4 assists in the first period alone, ended up with 5 in the game, and that tied a Lightning record with 5 assists in a game. I can't figure this team out. I said a couple weeks ago, Serena, was in my South Florida Tribune column, that they're streaky. Now they're just downright unpredictable. You don't know what you're going to get with Tampa Bay on a night-to-night basis, and that's a little scary to me.
It's scary in a good way. It indicates that you can't underestimate a team like that. I think when you go in and underestimate a team, that's when you're in the most danger. And we saw, I don't know, I think there was a lot of teams, potentially Boston last year in the playoffs, that probably underestimated the Panthers a little bit, and Carolina underestimated the Panthers, things like that a couple of years ago. But you're absolutely right. You can't underestimate a team. And when I looked at Tampa at the start of the year, it's not like they have a garbage team. They have a great hockey team. And I think that they are playing at the level or above where they should be based on their talent.
Gotcha. Well, it's just, I don't know. I feel like most nights we know what we're going to get out of Florida. They win more often than they don't. Tampa Bay is just, they're a box of chocolates right now. Forrest Gump, they're probably Forrest Gump's favorite team. You don't know what you're going to get.
Potentially, but, you know, if you look at Colorado as well, Colorado's so talented, but again, they don't really have that great of goaltending.
They've had injuries. Colorado. Tampa really hasn't had the injuries to the extent that Colorado has. But
no, but Colorado, I would say just because they lost the other night, I still think Colorado is playing well overall. What we saw from them, sure, they turned around and went to Tampa and it just wasn't the same team. That's completely fine. It's the way it's going to be. Not everybody's going to always be on. It's like the Panthers losing in Chicago. I don't think anybody predicted that happening, but like I always say, anything's possible. So you just never know what you're going to get. Same with Colorado. It's more of a shock that Colorado lost, I think, that much than it was that Tampa won by that much.
we're roughly, I think, at 13 minutes on 2 topics, 2 really good ones. We're just covering the Panthers of late and the Lightning of late. But before we get to this U.S. Thanksgiving analytic, Marty Ladouceur, one of the viewers of this program, of the thousands that we have, said you jinxed Ovi with your Bobby Clark comment. She says somebody needs to Bobby Clark, and for those that don't know, that's poleaxe him across the ankle. Bobby Clark did that to Russia in the late 70s.
No, in 72 in the Summit Series.
Whatever. Yeah.
First of all, I said that like as a joke. I don't really believe in that style of hockey. For the record, I really don't want to see that happen. I didn't like it when Bobby Clark did it. I don't like it. I'm just
Yeah, Karlovmov was who we slashed, right? Sorry. But I think Marty's saying it tongue-in-cheek, just like you said it tongue-in-cheek.
Yeah.
He was already injured by the time you said that.
Oh, yeah, he was.
But then
He was
the
already
news
hurt.
comes out that he's going to be out 4 to 6 weeks with whatever the lower body injury is. It slowed down his pursuit of Wayne. He's 26 goals away, and I still don't know if he's going to make it. I go to a construction friend of mine who says the last 10% of a building is the hardest 10% to finish.
Yeah, well, if Ovi would have still kept playing, he would have hit it by Christmas the way
Yeah.
he was going. Dang.
We talked about coach firings last week, so if we have time in this episode, we can finish it out with that. Although, Shane, watching in Manitoba, said the last 2 minutes of last week's show was the best minutes of the whole show. I don't even remember what that
I
was.
have absolutely no idea what we were talking about.
It was
but-
about Wayne. It was about the most impressive record. And you said
Oh.
Wayne's 50 and 39 was.
Yeah.
I'm like, why didn't you bring that up when I asked you 5 points ago? But anyways, here we are. The statistic is this. If you are in a playoff spot in the NHL at U.S. Thanksgiving, which is this week, 80% of those teams will make the playoffs. Interesting statistic here, or fact, it's not even a stat. The new teams in a playoff spot this year that weren't last year are Buffalo, New Jersey, Minnesota, and Calgary. They're in a playoff spot today. 12 of the 16 teams currently in a spot will get in. 4 will be out. That's 80%. Who will they be? The teams that are out of a playoff spot right now that made the playoffs last year are the Islanders, Bruins, Predators, and Oilers. So it's not like the coaches and GMs are sitting back going, ha, 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 guys, 80% of us are going to make the playoffs, so we're good. They're probably not really even thinking about this, right? Because all the work's still ahead of them, not behind them.
Coaches don't think about this stuff. This
No,
is
not
a
at all.
stupid media made-up thing to give them something to talk about
fun as
this
hell, though.
early in the season. But we talk about both Buffalo and New Jersey. I think realistically, let's be honest, last year, they're finally playing up to their potential this year when they could have been doing it last year. They had a lot of the same players on their teams. They had a lot of talent, and they just weren't doing it. And I'm pretty sure we had the same conversation about those two teams on here going, what is going on with those guys? How come they're not playing better? Calgary, whatever, don't care. And then Minnesota, I mean, Kaprizov's been lighting up the league this year. And I think when you have your best player playing up to his potential, it's also bringing that around. Minnesota always manages to just weasel their way into the playoffs, though.
However they do it, I mean, whoever the goalie is, Gustafsson some nights, that's who we saw when he was through Sunrise. Marc-Andre Fleury, although we had a gaffe against the Oilers the other night. I don't know who's going to get in, but I swear, I just watched the Panthers and the Lightning. That's kind of what I focus on. There's too many teams, too many games, so I enjoy that. I just look at the results from the other games, and the Calgary Flames are in a playoff spot right now. Shocks the hell out of me. I'm shocked you even more probably because you hate them.
Yeah. Do
you think they're going to continue this?
Well, I think that the reason they're in a playoff spot right now is because they had a strong start to the season that nobody expected. Again, underestimate a team and see what happens. But Calgary can't keep up the pace that they had. They just don't have the talent. If they do manage to get themselves into the playoffs, they're not going to go anywhere because they just don't have the players. I think it was just such a shock, and they logged a lot of points in the first 15 games of the season that it got them to a position that they're in right now, but the pace is going to start to falter down.
Serena did kind of rain on the parade by saying coaches don't care about this because she's right. And I never really did either. I mean, who doesn't like a good stat? But it doesn't mean jack squat. For instance, the Oilers weren't in a playoff spot this time last year. And as a matter of fact, if we'd had the time or the desire, you mentioned, let's go back into last year's show at this time and look at who made it and who didn't. The Oilers weren't in a playoff spot. They went all the way to the Stanley Cup final because they rallied shortly after firing their coach. The year before that, the Panthers weren't in a playoff spot. As a matter of fact, they were out of a playoff spot 72% of the year.
Yeah.
The first team in NHL history to do that. Be out of a playoff spot 3/4 of the year and then get hot at the end and get in. This kind of proves you to you this stat didn't mean much?
It doesn't mean anything. It's like everybody says, when the playoffs start, that's a whole new season.
Sure, but you got to get there. And we're sitting here
course.
talking about who is going to be in, right?
It's like Rod turns to me the other day and he's like, so if the playoffs started right now, Edmonton and Winnipeg would play each other. And I was like, who even says this shit? Who looks at that stuff? I personally don't understand why anybody takes any effort. It's enough effort for me to go look with one eye open if the Oilers won the night before, because I'm like, I really don't want to open my phone and see what I'm about to look at because it's probably terrible.
Well, I've been in the media my whole life. She's been formerly in the media, and in our friends in the Panthers press box consider us currently media, and I appreciate them for doing so. But the media and the fans look at things so differently than the coaches do in all of these regards. And I'm kind of trapped between the two, right? Because like you, I see so many things that don't matter. I'm not going to go down that analytic debate. We talked about that last week and a couple weeks before that. Here's another one. The coach firing odds. We sit here and we talked about it. Derek Lalonde in Detroit. He's up there on the power odds from BetMGM or who's going to be fired. Derek Lalonde, Detroit. Mike Sullivan, Pittsburgh. Andrew Burnett, Nashville. Nobody talked about Jim Montgomery in Boston. Nobody talked about Drew Bannister in St. Louis, and they both got a can tied to their ass.
What's the one thing that I have been saying on this show from day one?
That you're great.
People talk and they say shit and they're always wrong. And the stuff that they talk about never happens. I'm like, why do people pay any attention to who's going to get traded at the trade deadline? Because it never happens like that. Never. So why does anybody put any energy into it? I've felt that way for decades. It's the way it's always been, especially since social media came up. Everybody's trying to be the guy that breaks the story. And having odds on when a coach is going to get fired, what the hell is wrong with you people? You're willing to bet money on when someone's going to lose their job? That's terrible.
Well, that's just sports. We talked about this a couple of weeks ago. In Canada, they don't talk about it at all. In America, they do with the NFL coaches. That's kind of where I got the idea from. But that's why I said I'm kind of lost between what the coaches think and what the fans think, and the media is in the middle being screamed at by both. Because fans munch this stuff up. I actually brought that up on my show the other day. I'm like, why do you guys care about all the things you just said? And the viewer said, he was a guy in Winnipeg. He goes, because we love it. We love the speculation. You know what? It's like election talk. I didn't watch any of that shit.
The NHL in Canada and hockey in Canada equates to
US
the presidential election in the United States.
Or college football in the States, too.
No. College football, people love it just like they love hockey. But everybody in Canada has their own opinion, and their opinion is right. In case you didn't know, their opinion is right.
You're the perfect example of that.
100%. No, I'm pretty open to things. Like, I'm willing to... Don't give me that bullshit. Look, what are you talking about? Y'all,
continue.
You sit back like...
You're not open to anything, but continue.
Anyway, I was actually trying to tell a story, but that's totally
Sorry,
fine.
I'm sorry. You said everybody in Canada thinks they know everything or that they're right.
But it's the way it is. It's like just like it is here with whether you're red or blue. Most people don't know who I vote for because none of their fucking business. I don't talk about it. Nobody needs to know who I vote for. But everybody loves to take sides here, just like they do in Canada about hockey. Hockey Canada was like the biggest controversy in Canada for the longest time because it's Hockey Canada. Nobody cares about anything in Canada more than they care about hockey. They don't care who the prime minister is more than they care about their hockey team. No chance. People die there, you guys, when people die, it's in their obituary. He was a lifelong Leafs fan, never missed a Saturday night game. That is in people's obituaries there.
One more. And he willed to his son and grandson his season tickets to the Leafs.
Yeah, guys, this is literally how it is in Canada. My tombstone had better have an Oilers logo on that bitch. And it will. I told Rod the other day, I'm like, I will never not be an Oilers fan. Until the day I die, that will be the biggest thing to me. If I got over August 1989, everybody can get over everything else and get over it. But
August 9th, 1988, the Gretzky trade?
Right, yeah.
Yeah, it's all good. You don't want to bring back harmful resumes or memories. But that's just a little with me with the Dallas Cowboys. Just, I'm not diehard. I have two pieces of Cowboys clothing that I wear, but it's the only NFL team I've ever cheered for. It's not like her being an Oiler fan. That's her thing. But I get it, why you don't switch teams, or you always got to pay attention to what they're doing. Whether you watch the game or not, you still want to know whether they're winning or not. I get it.
Oh, this brings up, I'm going to say this on here, and it's going to piss some people off. We were at a friend's house for food. Smoked a brisket, chicken. It was fantastic. There was a Panthers fan there. And fine, he's a Panthers fan.
Be careful,
but
he's watching probably.
Hey, fine, I'm not going to talk shit, but I will say this. I don't understand. This man literally sat there and said, oh, I was a diehard Bruins fan growing up. Diehard. But I moved to South Florida and I just realized this is his belief, and I'm not shitting on him for his belief. But he was like, I just figured I needed to be a fan of one of the teams here. And I'm like, I can't even wrap my head around that concept. I just can't. I can't. And that was his thing. That's fine. But I'm like, I said, no. He goes, if you move somewhere, you got to be a fan of the team. I'm like, I disagree. I will just never not. It's in my blood. That just goes to show me that he thinks he's a diehard Bruins fan. It wasn't in his blood. I don't understand.
He was also, well, okay, we're going to end it on this. But he goes, I've lived here longer than I lived in Boston, so I figured I would switch teams. And you said, I disagree. And it went over the whole conversation like a fart in church. It was the end of it. And my thing is, how about we all cheer for whoever we want? How about that?
I mean, I don't care who people cheer. I don't care who people cheer for, just like I don't care who you vote for. Makes no difference to me.
Right. But if he wants to switch allegiances, go ahead.
Knock yourself out. But don't expect me to do that shit. Ain't no way it'll ever happen. It's just not going to happen.
I certainly don't, and I don't think they do either. Do you, Ben?
Benny doesn't.
Yeah, we're done. You got anything to say, Ben, for yourself? You done? You good?
I'm all good.
Everybody tune in next week because we will be joined by Florida Panthers fan favorite Peter Worrell. You asked for him, and you got him. Until then, gobble, gobble. Happy Thanksgiving. See you next week on Cats and Bolts. That was fun.